Were ancient astronauts mistaken for gods by our ancestors? Imagine the scene. A giant UFO lands in the desert, laser beams extend below the ship and maneuver large slabs of stone into position as the astonished primitives watch. Later, when the ship is gone, 3 huge monuments remain, and for 8 generations the confused tribes recount the events in their legends and texts and describe the ship as messengers from the gods or from the skies, and its pilots as angels. It turns out that this exactly is what we've been reading from ancient Greek texts concerning space aliens, Atlanteans, and the gods of Mount Olympus. Now, it turns out that during the Second World War, U.S. troops created air bases on some remote islands in the Pacific Ocean, and the natives, who had no experience with technology, saw, quote, giant metal birds, and, quote, landing, which made them think that their gods had chosen Earth as their home. Seeing these great planes land and take off, primitive peoples might have considered them as something supernatural to the technology that we consider as normal. What they liked most about those planes was the free food that was distributed. American soldiers delivered large loads of food as aid to the local populations. At the end of the war, the military bases in the Pacific Ocean were closed and consequently stopped supplying the goods. To lure ships back and summon new deliveries of goods, believers in the quote-unquote cargo cult instituted religions, rituals, and practices, such as reproducing rough landing strips, airplanes, radios, and mimicking the behavior of military personnel observed to the area that they had worked on the site. So this is how authentic religions were born, perhaps. This phenomenon, known as the cargo cult, developed mainly in some remote areas of New Guinea and in other tribal societies of Melanesia and Micronesia, coinciding with the arrival of the first ships of European explorers in the 19th century. The sects are similar. They even appeared in other parts of the world. During the last 65 years, the cargo cult dwindled until it almost disappeared. But on the island of Tanna in Vanuatu, the cult of John Frum survives, one of the most popular, which was born before the war and then became a cargo cult. It's clear that the analogy of these corned beef cults fits very plausibly into the scenario described by ancient astronaut theorists. According to these researchers, something similar may have happened in the past of humanity. So is it possible that ancient alien astronauts visited Earth thousands of years ago and were mistaken for gods to give birth to all the religions, or most of the religions, or the legends that we know today? On July 20th, 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first men to set foot on the moon, so the book says, just like aliens do when they visit other worlds. Before that event, everything was science fiction, but now everything you could imagine seems possible, because they say that what was fiction 100 years ago is now science. If a man can travel to space and travel to other planets, why not beings from other planets could visit our planet? There is currently a wave of UFO sightings and new theory emerging that aliens have visited Earth in ancient times and were considered gods. But if that were true, shouldn't there be some proof? Maybe there is. We have to open our eyes and our imagination. The proof perhaps is in those around us. Now, if visitors from other planets were considered gods, shouldn't there be some notation written about them? And perhaps the answer is right under our noses, in one of the most incredible of all, the Bible perhaps. According to Erich von Däniken, author of the bestseller The Return of the Gods, he's convinced that the Earth had been visited in the past by beings from other planets, and this is totally consistent with his faith in God and the Bible. It's just a matter of interpretation, he says. He says, you have to understand that I believe in God, but when I was young, he was my almighty God and never needed a vehicle to move or get up into the air. Von Däniken told History Channel, on the other hand, in the book of the Old Testament, there are many references to the visits of God and his angels to Earth. Sometimes these visits are accompanied by terrible noise and clouds of smoke. In the book of Ezekiel, for example, the prophet narrates having witnessed the visit of celestial beings who descended from heaven aboard a fantastic flying machine. For von Daniken, it would be a detailed description of an alien sighting. And here's a text. Quote, I looked, and behold, a stormy wind from the north, a great cloud, and a whirlwind of fire, which shone all around, and in the midst could be seen a flash of hot metal, and the shape of his face were like the face of a man. All four had the face of a lion on the right, and the face of a bull on the left, and all four had the face of an eagle. The beings came and went like an arrow. Beings, I looked, and behold, a wheel on the ground next to the four. The wheels looked and felt like topaz, and all four were the same shape. Its appearance and structure were like a wheel within a wheel. The beings could move forward in any of the four directions without turning as they moved. The four-wheel rims were tall and scary, and they were covered with eyes all around. When living things moved, the wheels moved with them. When they flew up, the wheels also went up. The spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. So wherever the spirit went, the wheels and the living beings also went. When the beings moved, the wheels moved. When the beings stopped, the wheels stopped. When the beings flew up, the wheels rose, because the spirit of the living beings was in the wheels. Above the heads of these beings was something very bright, like a glass dome, and under the firmament their wings were straight, one towards the other. Each one had two that covered his body. When they moved, I heard the roar of the wings like the noise of many waters, like the thunder of the Almighty, like the roar of the storm, like the tumult of an army. End quote. This is from Ezekiel 1, 5, and 27. Ezekiel describes not only what he sees, he also describes what he feels and defines everything as a whole glory of God. The prophet also describes four different winged creatures with human faces who rode on shiny wheel-like devices. In the glory of God, there is something like a throne where a being who seemed human sat. Ezekiel affirms that these moved thanks to a vehicle provided with wings, whose noise was similar to the roar of a waterfall. Ezekiel sees a wheel within a wheel, and this theme sounds more like the advanced technology that something supernatural. Considering that we cannot expect such people to know the difference between the supernatural and advanced technology, Ezekiel's story could have a real historical basis interpreted with religious categories. There is another character in the Jewish tradition that von Daniken takes as a sample to prove his thesis, and that is Enoch. Enoch appears only once in the Bible, but more often in spurious versions of the Old Testament in the book of Enoch, and he talks about the fallen angels as well, the Nephilim. It's said that the great-grandfather of Moses was taken to heaven by God for 300 years. He is taken to heaven and meets the Most High, the great glory, which for the Jewish religion is one of the names of God the Almighty, saying to his servants, he taught this young man our language, and then he teaches how to write. So Enoch started writing books. Enoch was the first witness of a contact between humanity and some kind of extraterrestrial, celestial, or whatever you want to call it. When all these stories were writing was a relatively new invention in the first written report of him, were what actually happened, what his eyes saw, and what his ears heard. The events were so important and significant that our ancestors had to put them in writing. So why can't modern society accept that these stories could be true? The gods of other religions? These supernatural phenomena are not only found in the Bible. Almost all religions have similar stories of gods with spectacular powers and abilities descending to earth and directly influencing human history. In the ancient Sanskrit epic written in India, there are numerous descriptions of the Vimana, or the mythical flying machines used by the gods. In one of these accounts, the Bhagavata Purana, dating back more than 5,000 years, is a description of a metal flying vehicle piloted by a king named Nirga. In another Sanskrit text, such as the Mahabharata, the Rig Veda, and the Ramayana, you will find descriptions of the Vimana as wide as 30 meters, 90 to 100 feet, and with the same capabilities as a modern aircraft. A Vimana producing a beam of light that, if aimed at a target, consumes them with its power. So this sounds like a laser. Now, this sounds like a laser weapon with a beam of photons of incredible power. More than a religious text, it seems like a science fiction story. The amazing thing is that all these stories collected are accepted as true by modern Indian society. So it's hard to believe that these descriptions are simply fictional accounts, because although they were written thousands of years ago, they correspond to those reported by people today in the case of UFO sightings. So is it possible that we're facing real events described by the authors of that time? And then we have these mysterious cave paintings of the Stone Age, and you see that they look like almost as if they're ancient astronauts. In addition to written testimony, there could be other evidence of ancient astronauts coming to the planet. In many cases, paintings and hieroglyphs, stone carvings found around the world, petroglyphs. A picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say. And when we see the drawings in a cave that seem to represent astronauts wearing helmets, what else could they be but perhaps alien cosmonauts or astronauts? In Colombia, thousands of artifacts have been found that incredibly resemble airplanes of our times. There are wings and the fuselage, the upturned tail and fin, which does not appear in nature, but exists only in modern aerodynamics. So did our ancestors see something similar flying in the sky? Another very interesting artifact can be seen in the Istanbul Museum in Turkey. There's a man sitting in some kind of a spaceship, and you can see the hands and you can see the connected pipes on some devices. Wearing a suit and legs are bent. Even to the untrained eye, it looks very streamlined and certainly looks like something from outer space. Our ancestors witnessed something and tried to portray it as well as possible with the cultural categories and imagination of primitive humanity. The incredible thing is that despite the fact that these human cultures were far from each other, they all have the same experience of extraterrestrial contact. And the return of the gods. Millions of people around the world worship their God with no idea who or what their God is. Will the Almighty God they hope and pray to have an extraterrestrial origin? What difference will the terms celestial and extraterrestrial make for them? Many stories around the world say that the gods will return again, and if it's true, the day the ancient astronauts return in all their glory, will most of humanity pay homage to them and worship them as they did then? Did they in ancient times? Very likely, yes. This article, originally published in Kaiga, and it's on Collective Spark by Kien Kaiga. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.